Welcome to the Hired Geek Podcast, where we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell, Community Engagement Lead at Pathify. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Hired Geek Podcast is a proud member of the Enrollify Podcast Network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow every day. Explore all of our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Hey there, listeners. Dustin here, and I wanted to pop in really quick to do a brief prologue to this super special episode that we're sharing out this week. So I recently had the opportunity to moderate a panel at the Times Higher Education Student Success Summit, where I was moderating the conversation where the panelists were discussing how adult learners are enrolling in higher education in record numbers and how institutions need to adapt their offerings to serve them better. Really great conversation, some very unique different perspectives on how best to support adult learners. So I do hope you enjoy this special episode number 219 with our Student Success Summit panel. Personalization has been a really big buzzword for me lately, and I'm glad that we're kind of spending some time to talk through it with an amazing panel of folks that are working in a lot of different areas across higher education. But we'll do quick introductions before we get in to the questions that we've prepared and everything. So my name is Dustin Ramsdell. I am the founder and host of the Hired Geek Podcast. Been doing it for 6 years this month. Over 200 episodes of amazing conversations just like this one. So definitely go check it out if you are into that kind of thing. But we'll just go down the line. If you all want to introduce yourselves, just say your name, current role. Obviously, folks can see it up on the board here. Just say a little bit about your organization and how long you've been working in education.
Chris Dickson, the Assistant Dean of Student Success at College Unbound, he, him pronouns. Nice to be with you all today. I've been there for about 6.5 years, 6 winters in Rhode Island. And I'll pass it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Flood. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a manager of student success coaching at Purdue Global, Purdue's online institution for adult learners. And I'm really excited to be here today. Have been in education since 2018. I have experience in success coaching as well as in the K-12 sector. And I'm really excited for this conversation today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Guymon. I'm Associate Provost for Academic Affairs and Director of Graduate Studies at Utah Tech University. Utah Tech University is the only open enrollment polytechnic university in the United States. Prior to that, I was at the University of Chicago for as long as most of you have been alive.
All right, so I don't know if that's true. I think we got a wide range of ages here, but personalization of support for adult learners. It's definitely a big topic. Adult learners are increasingly showing up on campuses as we, approach enrollment cliffs and are just seeing an expansion of more access points around, online degrees, non-credit offerings, certificates, and all that. There's just more access and more opportunity for adult learners to be pursuing credentials that are relevant to them as they go through their lifelong learning process. But we'll start out with kind of a broad question, and we can just kind of go down the line again for this one just to get everybody's perspectives. But what has been your recent experience enrolling and supporting adult learners at your institutions, and how do you feel like it's maybe changed over the past several years? Because I feel like all of you have been kind of either working in your current roles for a good bit of time, or was it just writ large working in higher education? So trying to honor sort of the change over time, but also just what are you kind of seeing right now?
So I'll just jump in. So a little bit about College Unbound. College Unbound is New England's newest accredited institution. We've been accredited for about 3-ish years. That feels right. And we've been around for about 15 years. And from the beginning, College Unbound was designed for adults in Rhode Island to return to college and actually finish their bachelor's degree. We offer 1 bachelor's degree in organizational leadership and change, and that allows folks to actually design a project, something that they care about as like a site of study and build that into the world. There's about 3 things on my mind over the last couple of years that I will just touch on briefly. That's kind of from the last, for the last 2 years that are in my mind. But I want to talk about collaboration, wellness, and supporting justice-impacted learners in higher ed. One around collaboration. We realize with pandemic and the stretchiness of hiring now folks that are staff that are more remote, that we just need to figure out what does it mean to collaborate during this time. And so we've actually have a cross team that meets every 2 weeks, and this is between student success, admissions, and enrollment. And this allows us to actually say, hey, we're taking these students in. What are the things that we need to do to be responsive to their needs as they come into our space next fall or spring? And that's been incredibly insightful, and we've learned along the way that when we don't do that work well, students aren't succeeding well. And the great part about that meeting is that we have a first semester transition person that actually is part of, has a quasi seat between admissions and student success. And so she works as kind of a nexus role between those. And that's been really helpful. The other piece that I want to talk about is wellness. We've realized that students during these last 2 years have been just not feeling well. And that's just not emotionally well. That's a distance between civic wellness. And so we've decided what does it think about to create a whole program? We built this program called SWELL, Student Wellness and Engaged Living, which incorporates these 9 categories of wellness, which I'll read to y'all that are a lot of fun. Emotional wellness, financial wellness, learning wellness, spiritual wellness, environmental wellness, vocational wellness, physical wellness, social wellness, and civic wellness. For College Unbound, we don't want to just create a gym. We actually want to build the collaborative space for adults to share wellness activities that work for one another. And so we've actually, on our learning management system on Moodle, we built a wellness page for folks to share different ideas. And students are hired as work study coaches, student success coaches, to actually coach one another around a wellness specialty that they really resonate with. And then lastly, around all the affirmative action stuff that's happened recently, we want to be a college that really supports and serves justice-impacted learners. And so we're not looking to just build a program in prison. We've been doing that since 2015. But we want to actually think about what are the ways that we're sustaining adult learners in higher ed. And that means actually having expungement clinics and partnering with local institutions that are doing great work.
At Purdue Global, we have just over 35,000 students, and 59% of those students are over the age of 30, and 50% are first generation. And so we really need to be cognizant of that student's experience that's coming from that lens. And so I work with a team of success coaches who are able to support students that are having difficulties in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom due to external circumstances in terms of basic needs support. And so we work to make sure that the student is going to be able to be stabilized before we can start working on the academic issues that they may be struggling with. And so we want all of our experiences with the students to be individualized and holistic for their experience, right? No student's experience is the same, and we want to be able to acknowledge that and provide them resources that they don't have to go searching for, right? The fewer the clicks, the better. We need to be able to pull it and have it be right in their laps so that they can find these resources and not have to go searching on their own, because that saves them precious time and money, right? They're going to a lot of them are working full time. They have dependents who they're caring for. And so we want to make this as easy as possible. Additionally, to Chris's point earlier about mental well-being, we have all of our success coaches are mental health first aid trained. And I think that's a skill that everyone should have, because it helps us be able to have these conversations with people and students who may be undergoing a crisis. And although we're not professionals in the counseling realm, we are able to better facilitate those conversations and then provide them with resources and local support that they will be able to benefit from. And so it just helps us to make a little bit of a warm handoff and provide something in the moment for them while also providing them with long-term support later on.
So I should get the award, I believe, for attending the most Times Higher Education Campus Lives events. This is my 4th one. Been in Boston, Los Angeles, Chicago, and now back to Los Angeles. A year ago and one day, there was one here in Los Angeles. And the final speaker of the event was President Paul LeBlanc of Southern New Hampshire University. And usually, at least my experience with conferences, is that when you get to the last speaker, you see people heading for the doors right before it. They want to go catch their flights, or they feel like they've absorbed about as much as they can without exploding. And he was there to speak about his book called Students First. And he was interviewed by Doug Letterman. I've seen him wandering around here as part of this conference. And in large measure, what the book is about how Southern New Hampshire came to develop their online operation. But he diverted for a moment, and he just talked about a 2.5 hour moment in writing the book where he started to think about all the barriers that we put in students' lives. And what a crime that really was. And it was a really fascinating moment because he went off his notes and just talked about the feelings he had. So one of the things that I've been trying to do, and as I mentioned, I spent many years at the University of Chicago, which is about as traditional as you're going to find. And now I'm at a university that's open enrollment, and we are looking for ways for students to succeed, all students. So one of the things that I've been doing is asking the question of why. We are really good in universities of establishing policies. We are really good at introducing barriers. One of the things that's very interesting that's come up more recently in the last year or so is to discover how many students have actually met the requirements to graduate, but have never received their diploma. And in some cases, they will tell you they didn't know where to go to fill out the application for graduation. So I have become known, and because of the fact that I'm an associate provost, and ask these type of questions without too many groans. But one of the things I've been asking more and more is, why are we doing this? Do we really want these type of barriers in people's lives? So for example, in our online unit, there is a flat tuition fee. That's it. No fees, nothing else. So students know exactly what they are getting into when they enter our program. That is not something that is the case at a lot of other universities. And so I think what I would share with you is what I've been trying to do is continually ask the question of why? Why are we doing what we're doing? And really, is there a legitimate reason for us doing what we are doing?
Yeah, I think that we're in this sort of existential crisis kind of moment of really interrogating some of the paradigms and things that have been going on for a long time because life was so disrupted, and kind of all our recent collective memory and everything. But yeah, the needs of working adult learners who are caregivers and all that, their needs are so complex, and all the things that you sort of outlined of the wellness that you want to try to help foster, but even just sort of interladen, I feel like in a lot of what you all kind of mentioned was sort of the humanity, the idea of okay, we're trying to empower coaches to be as supportive as they can, help peers, help each other, sort of equip them with the, the knowledge and the skills and abilities and things to help, each other. And that even just has the byproduct of just helping to build community. You connected with a peer who was helpful, or even just made that connection with your institution through a coach or something. But the idea too of another kind of word that's been ringing in my head a lot is just sort of frictionless. How can we just remove friction? Because I think any of us can sort of understand when we're trying to do something and we keep hitting friction points, hurdles, roadblocks, we're eventually just going to bail out. It's not worth it for me to try to fill out this survey or something because it's just become too cumbersome. And the fact that these students who are earnestly pursuing higher education, whatever format that's taking, it's we owe it to them to be asking why. Why is this the way that it is? Can we, make it more frictionless for them? But so, these students are coming in with a lot of complex needs, but again, these are, higher institutions are little cities. They're big organizations that can, I think, utilize their kind of collective resources and willpower to address those needs. And I kind of wanted to sit with that for a moment of talking about, leveraging those resources to support your students. We kind of go reverse order this time of, have you seen different preferences for the types of support or the modality, the delivery of that support, those kind of dynamics changing? Just any thoughts on that?
So I would share a couple of things. First of all, the whole issue around mental health is really something that we cannot ignore and we must deal with. I had a situation about 6 weeks ago where I found out that one of our students, online students, left the university because she had a challenged moment. And when I started to delve into it, I found out that she first called our mental health center and said, "We're sorry, you live in another state. We can't help you because mental health professionals are licensed by state." And I went immediately to our vice president of students and I said, "No more. This will never happen again." And within a week, we had set up a 24/7 counseling center online with telemed that can serve students no matter where they are anywhere in the world. The other thing I would say is that we are much more concerned about how students are learning in the classroom. Let me just share with you, I mentioned that I've gone to many of these Times Higher Education events. The first one I went to was in Boston. And one of the things that they are doing at MIT is they are doing weekly course evaluations, not with the intent of criticizing the fact member, but to determine if the student is really learning what the fact member thinks they are learning. So it's a venue whereby students can give feedback and say, when you got through this portion of your discussion, it didn't work for me. And so the fact member can go back and say, this week we're going to go back and talk about this subject. A few years ago, that would never have happened. And so with the onset of technology, AI, and such things, these are opportunities now for us to better serve the student, to make sure that the student is the priority.
People and students and people crave belonging, right? They crave belonging, they crave trust. And so one of the things that we try to do is instill trust within our students and to help them feel like they belong in a fully virtual space. That can be tricky at times. So it leaves us needing to be creative and thinking outside of the box in terms of ways that we can get in the student's space and help them come to us in a way that we could probably on a brick and mortar campus walk to their dorm room and knock on their door and bring them over, right? If we didn't hear from them in a while. In a fully virtual space, you can't do that. And so we have to get creative. They're used to getting all these emails from the institution. So how can we stand out? And so one of the things that we've been doing is varying our outreach techniques in terms of texting, calling, emailing. But if we don't hear back from a student, we'll send them a personalized video message and we'll say their name and we'll say, these are the things that we can bring to you. And, if the student is feeling a little bit nervous with meeting with a coach and they just don't know what to expect, if they see a video with a coach saying their name and offering these personalized individual supports that they could take advantage of, that might take the edge off of their nervousness and bring them in the door. So a lot of it is just figuring out how we can meet the student where they're at, get in their space and invite them in and be welcoming. And, we can't really put up a welcome space, physical space, right? We can only do our virtual. And so it's a matter of getting creative. Additionally, what we have done is we have instituted an online social media platform that is only for students. It's called Get Set. And essentially what students are able to do is they can go in there, ask questions, answer questions, and give advice to their peers. And so this is different because on like a Facebook page, faculty and staff could be in there, and it's just different because the students are able to just connect with one another and be open and honest about the institution. The only staff members we have in there are content monitors, making sure that everyone's being safe and appropriate. And, if for the most part, students can just be themselves, right? And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do just to give them a sense of community. And so far we have over 16,000 students in that space. And so we're really happy with how it's going so far.
We're at 369 students right now, and I don't know how we'd get to that number, but I'll say, because I say this because I'm thinking of something I didn't think about, but you're mentioning texting. And at the beginning of every semester, I text all new students and old students my phone number, because it just has been the easiest way to connect with folks in case they need something. But I don't yet know what that looks like at those numbers, but I hope we get there. But I think this question about personalization and having designated folks on campus that have folks' numbers that are easy to connect to. We're talking about adults who aren't like myself, great at sending emails and doing all those sorts of things, like checking their Moodle. A text message goes so long for folks to just check in. Hey, we missed you at class this week, and sending those kinds of messages. Not you missed class, but we missed you at class. And that's a different kind of caring response. And it goes back to so a student approached us last year at College Unbound while we were teaching in the prison and said, "Hey, I have 186 college credits, but no degree. Can you help me with that?" I imagine there's people all in your community that are locked up that have no degree, but the credits, and want to encourage folks to think about what does it mean to serve them always. And lastly, I'll say, with our wellness work with Swell and our hiring work study coaches, we found that just building childcare wasn't actually meeting the student-parent need. There's good research around this with community colleges and other spaces that have tried to do childcare. Like, it only serves 10% of folks that are actually needing student-parent support. And so we've used work study as an opportunity to actually hire student-parent coaches. These are folks that are saying, "Hey, I have a kid with an intellectual disability. Let me teach you how to actually manage time." The Harvard Business Review came out with this great series about parenting studies, but I'll also say our student success parenting coaches are doing an incredible job with their lived experience, actually teaching and facilitating that work with others. And so I just encourage folks to just trust the students that they work with. They're experts, especially adults, to do the work that we're all trying to do together.
Yeah, something that I'm just kind of picking up a lot on is like kind of like the warmth. I mean, like you even mentioned the kind of handoff person or something that kind of bridges the gaps between admissions, enrollment, and student support, and even just sort of the like keeping the human in the process, the warmth, the kind of personal touch, where we can leverage technology to enable kind of high touch practices. That's always been something that I've always been really excited to see examples of that. And I feel like, everybody kind of striving towards that, and even just ways that we can try to, use different ways to deliver information to students where it's like, an over-reliance on email, trying to get away from that, where you could, text a student or have a campus app that can send push notifications to their phone about reminding them to just check the box to finish their graduation application or something. Like there's been a lot of this sort of a presumption, I feel like, of like, well, we built it and, we told them once during orientation how everything works. They like memorize it. It's like trying to personalize, make things timely, relevant, and as simple as possible. I think it's just really the name of the game here. But as we continue to move on, one of the other big questions I wanted to ask, and maybe after this we'll see if there are any sort of burning questions. We can do some Q&A, but I have some other questions I can ask as well. But what paradigm shifts do you feel like advising teams or support teams, coaching teams need to make to better engage and support adult learners? Are there like different tools or processes or things that they should be implementing? So I feel like it's been kind of interlaid in a lot of your all's answers and everything, but we can go back down again through reverse order, with the idea of like trying to give some tactics, some tips, some tricks that folks can implement.
I'll jump in. At College Unbound, we saw advising as credit-worthy work, and so we actually blended advising staff as actually what we call lab faculty. These are folks that actually these are the cohort leaders of our students, and so advising is actually a tactic that we've actually blended into our structure, where folks actually are trained from our lab faculty are trained from day one about how to support and advise a student from start to finish. The other piece about that was really critical for us at College Unbound is that largely higher ed is built on the premise that folks actually leave their families, communities to attend college elsewhere. And so when you're working with adults, you actually have to think about what does it mean to be in partnership with their families and communities. And this came up earlier. And to see that actually as a space for where advising also needs to happen, and say, hey, what does it mean you're balancing being a parent? How can we talk about that? You're balancing what it means to have a job right now. Let's talk about that. And so seeing those pieces as active parts of supporting adults is something that we built into our credit structure.
Hey, it's Dustin here. Exciting news. I'll be at the Engage Summit in Raleigh, North Carolina on June 25th and 26th, and I'd love to meet you there. Hosted by Element 451, the Engage Summit is your roadmap for AI readiness in higher education. Sessions will focus on cutting-edge AI applications that are reshaping student outreach, enhancing staff productivity, and offering deep insights into ROI. This isn't your typical conference. It's a strategic summit where you'll learn from the best about leveraging AI and digital strategies in higher ed marketing. Imagine 2 days filled with hands-on sessions, real success stories, and the chance to network with top minds in the field. You'll leave with practical, transformative takeaways as you learn how AI fosters a more personalized, efficient approach from recruitment to student success. Oh, and the best part? The Engage Summit is incredibly affordable. Use the discount code Enrollify50 and you can register for just $99. So join me and many of my fellow Enrollify Network creators at the Engage Summit this June. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. Can't wait to see you there.
There are three things that I would like to say about this particular question. I think that one, this isn't part of my three, but like what,
So four, you have four things? Okay.
What I was saying before with that trust and belonging, right? We want to lead with empathy in our conversations with them and with the students. When we're having these conversations, we know that a student may be failing a class, but why are they failing a class? What is the root cause of that struggle? And is it in the classroom? A lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's an external thing that they're struggling with, an insecurity of some sorts. Maybe a student is experiencing housing or food insecurity, and they can't concentrate on their academics until that need is met. And so we have to find the root cause of that before we can offer those individualized supports. Because if we address that first concern, then we can get to the academic issues. And so that's what I will say about that. The second thing I wanted to mention is that during our sessions, we have a quick win always. And so when we have the student in the room, we make sure that we do something that is productive for the student, whether it's as small as sending an email to their faculty or turning in an assignment with us. We try to get that productivity ball rolling so that they can get back on their feet. And we know that if we take one small step forward, it's going to hopefully lead to more productivity along the way. And so that's what we want to do for our students, is to send them off with that quick win under their belt, something tangible they can walk away from our meeting with. The last thing I want to mention is sometimes in a student circumstance, it's appropriate for them to take a leave of absence from their courses, right? External circumstances, again, a death in the family, right? They need some time to take care of themselves, take care of their family, and really address the needs in their personal life before they can focus on their academics again. See, a trend is forming, right? And so having the advising staff, or the coaches in my case, be willing and able to have those conversations with the students of what does a leave of absence look like at our institution, and how can I maintain connection with you while you're away to facilitate a smooth transition back into the institution. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want them to do. We want them to graduate. We want them to make their comeback. And so a big emphasis on those three things, four things if you count the first one, and that's what I would say to that.
So my two colleagues have covered a lot of wonderful things. I'm going to talk about some paradigm shifts that I'm seeing within higher education and in our institutions. First of all, if you don't have a credit for a paralearning office, you need to have one. There needs to be an opportunity for us to review what a person has done in their lives, especially adult students. The second thing that we have done is we have, and this is not unique to us, it's common elsewhere, is we have what we call a Bachelor of Individualized Studies. It gets back to the issue of when you have a student who has 180 credit hours and they still haven't so-called qualified to graduate. And with this case, we put a high emphasis upon advising. We expect the student to help us understand what their goals are, how has the courses they've taken influenced or impacted those goals. And we have found ways for them to find completion much sooner. Another thing that is increasingly important is the opportunity of what we call open education resources, so that every student does not have to use their monthly paycheck to buy books at the bookstore. And it's a practice that we've embraced at Utah Tech, and it requires work, but it is not impossible to achieve. The last thing I would just make sure that you're aware of right now is that we're going to have 90 credit hour bachelor's degrees before long. If you go back and look at the history of how we came to all where we're at right now, it is really abstract in terms of how we got to 120. It really was, it kind of reminds me of my experience at Chicago, which was that they're on quarters. And the reason they're on quarters is because the faculty could not agree upon the courses that they could fit into a semester. So what they do, they added the quarters so they could get to that course, the number of courses they wanted. The last time we added a new degree type was in the 1890s, and that was the associate's degree. So we're at a moment right now. I'd love to stay with all of you tomorrow, but I have to fly up to Seattle tomorrow for our regional accreditation annual meeting. And the reason that's so important is I'm part of Northwest. It was the first regional accreditor approved the 90 credit hour degree. And it's a big, big topic. And so if you're not there yet, you need to be thinking about it, because the audience that we're talking about in this session will find that there'll be great applicability to them for this 90 credit hour degree.
Yeah, I do like that. There's certain things that have been around for long enough, or like something being created in the 1890s is like nobody is around anymore that's in any position of power that knew the time before that. But the idea that we just accept certain things as well, that's just natural law. That's just the way the world is supposed to be. And that idea of can we just ask why? I think that is such a really profound, all the things that you mentioned that really are challenging so many of the paradigms, but are not radical idea. They're sort of having their moment. And even for me, just sort of the idea of stackable credentials, if it is that idea of okay, if you're starting by doing a boot camp or some certificate program, we're putting you on the fast track and know that you have preferred admission into a master's program or something else. It's a similar idea of we want to honor the effort and the things that you've done and position you in a place to get where you want to go, get the credential that you want, everything. So really amazing advice and tactics and tricks and things there. Do want to take a moment to pause. Any questions for our panelists here? I do have some other questions, but I wanted to see any burning questions top of mind.
Thank you so much for these wonderful insights you've been sharing. I work in a very large system, SUNY system, 64 colleges. Some are more adult-friendly than others. Just if you were going to give a couple of pieces of advice for a college that very much wants to get into the adult learner market but has no sense of the holistic approaches that the three of you guys have described. Everybody wants the enrollment. They want to see bodies on their campuses, virtual or not. But I sometimes see they're missing forest through the trees. What would be the one or two things you would tell a college that wasn't formed in the way College Unbound or Purdue Global or what you're describing at Utah Tech? What would be a place you would ask them to start? Because frequently I find people are plunging headlong into, we're going to create all these programs for returning adults. They have not thought through the dimensions of what needs to be in place to support them once they're there.
I would start with be sure you're authentic. Mm-hmm. Do it for the right reasons, because if you don't, you'll get caught at some point and it will not go well. So make sure that the persons who are in decision-making roles, as along with your faculty, understand this audience and are doing it for all the right reasons. One of my fears every year is when my president would go to one of his conferences, he'd come back with the newest piece of candy and say, we should be doing this. Why haven't we been doing this yet? And I would just exercise some caution that when you do it, and let me just say that, it's not if you'll do it, it will happen, because it is the largest population in higher education today. So you just need to make sure that you do it in an authentic way that brings opportunity for completion to all those you serve.
Yeah, it makes me think of diving headlong into water in the dark or something. Where you're just I'm going to just dive right in. It's you don't even know what's under there. You're just going in. So it's being thoughtful and preparing. It's you can enroll a bunch of these students, but then you don't have any support resources for them. Ashley?
Yeah, I would say that get some representation in the room. So a lot of those students who you would be targeting are going to be working adults with dependents of some sort. And so, you could do a focus group with some of these students to get some ideas in that specific area. Otherwise, I would say, get some personal feedback from what a student's experience is from that demographic who you're wishing to serve and to have come to your university, and then use those as maybe marketing techniques, but authentic marketing, right? You want to show that this type of student can be successful at your college, and this is why. This is the type of support that they can receive from you. This is the tutoring. This is, the coaching, if you have it, that students can meet with. And I would just say get that representation in the room and get the students' testimonies.
I'd share So we know 1 in 4 adults have a criminal record in the U.S., and I think that it's vital if we're going to be doing this work that we interrogate. There's something around attrition in applications. There's a scholar in 2015 that looked at 30 colleges and found that 2/3 of applicants with criminal records actually stopped finishing their application because of just seeing that question, or they were asked for supplemental information. And so my advice is do that work, ban that box in your institutions, and that I think is a really important step in doing this.
Hey listeners, it's Mallory Wilsey, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. And I want to take just a moment to tell you about another show on Enrollify that I know you'll love. The Hidden Gem is a new show hosted by Maya Demishkovich, CMO at Carroll Community College. This podcast is dedicated to empowering community college presidents, leaders, and marketing and communication professionals with the knowledge and insights that you need to harness the full potential of strategic marketing and communications within your institution. New episodes drop every other Monday, and you can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search for The Hidden Gem wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, I think I've heard that in a lot of different ways of like even institutions love to see like calculus on some like high school student transcripts, and even just, it's a different conversation, but like those sort of like bits and pieces where it's like, why do you want them to take calculus? Like that's just this weird sort of bellwether for like, that's a great student because they took calculus in high school. It's like one question or one thing. And if it's like, again, challenging this perceived natural law or requirement, whatever, it's like, do you have to ask that? No. All right, well, let's take it off. And it's like, that can just be one small step that can have some outsized impact. So I love that one. Maybe, one more question. Yeah, up here in front.
This is for Ashley. You mentioned the personalized video to students who don't respond to any communication. How? I also have a coaching program, and we have peer coaches, and less than 10% of the students who contact actually schedule an appointment. So I'm trying to figure out how to
get them in the door. That's the biggest thing, right? Once you have them, you can give them all these resources and shower them with love. And that's, loving to a student to success. That's what we're here to do. And I think that a lot of the times when that's an instance in which a student has scheduled with us and then they no-show us or they ghost us, right? We use that joke during Halloween. It's just, if they had a meeting with you, they were kind of in the door already, but they just need that little oomph to get fully in the door, right? And so that's when we do the personalized messages, because it's not feasible for us to send individual messages out to 30,000 plus students, right? And so I think with our main focus, just focusing on that no-show population and trying to encourage them to take that last step. You're so close. You scheduled an appointment and I just want to talk to you so bad, and just showing them that you care in that way.
Yeah, and I do realize, I think we have a microphone that we may not be using for the questions, but that is quite all right. But I do feel like there's a lot of interest in questions. Maybe we'll just keep this going. We have about less than 10 minutes left. So if there are other questions, we'll certainly do that there in the back.
So I don't know if you will have any advice for this, but something I've seen in recent years are adult learners who have no ties, no community, no kids, no spouse, no nothing, that want the full college experience, including living on campus. So how can we make them have a sense of belonging, but like kind of keep them separate from the other students, because it might feel a little weird for the 18-year-old to then be in a space with a 32-year-old. So how do we include them, but not?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, no. Okay. I think to honor the sentiment of your question, it's like, because it's the idea is like, oh, wouldn't that be weird for the 18-year-old? It's like, it'd probably be weird for the 32-year-old too. It's like you want to be in community with even just near peers. Like there's going to be an idea, a certain gap. If you're intentional about it, can really have some great learning opportunities. But it's like, yeah, you'd want people to feel like, and that's maybe even just the initial catalyst for them to feel like they belong, is that they have people that are like them at the institution. That could be applicable in any sort of constituency. It's like, I want people that look like me or share my values or, interests or those sort of things. So yeah, I guess I'm curious any thoughts, because that is, I think, maybe a little bit more in kind of a residential sense or something, but just even anything, whether it is residential or digital, helping just make any student involved, engaged, supported, that sense of belonging. So I think that is an interesting thing where they want the classic college experience, maybe. How can you facilitate that for a non-traditional learner?
So at our university, it is state law that you have to serve all populations, and they actually provide financial incentives for different types of age groups, including the ones that you're describing, to actually come back to school. I think one of the things that is a struggle for higher education is that we are a victim of tradition. And in my previous responsibility at the University of Chicago, I spent 15 summers at the University of Oxford, which for me was like heaven. It was really a neat experience. But one of the things that we are not really good at is understanding that the largest student populace group is not the 18 to 22-year-old. And we need to organize events and clubs around those other groups. I'm less concerned about what's happening in the classroom. I'm more concerned about what's happening outside of the classroom. And so I think what we have to do is work with our vice president of students, whatever your equivalent is, and say, come in with some good data, do the focus group, like Ashley recommended, and find out what they want, and then organize clubs and other activities around those groups. I'm a great believer that you want as much diversity in the classroom as possible, including the traditional definitions of diversity, but also age. There's things that you can learn from people who are older than you. And so I think we are at fault as universities for having a singular, narrow focus. We're almost myopic in our thinking.
I'd say if you have a physical space that you can have like a common area and host events there and encourage, all college students, regardless of age, love free food. So get some pizzas, bring them in and play some games, or just have some social settings like that.
Because I think we already see that a little bit is that you might have like, well, this is the graduate student union. Like, you have some peers there, and that space is probably more apt to have a wide age range or backgrounds and that sort of thing. But then you might have a commuter student lounge. So it's like almost taking inspiration from that of like, you want these spaces that do feel welcoming and almost get in front of that sort of notion that obviously that student, it feels like, oh, I might not belong, or like it's a bunch of 18-year-olds, like what am I going to do there? But trying to help those students kind of get over that hump. And then it is almost the idea of like, the pizza party or whatever. It's like, that could be the catalyst that starts them finding their community elsewhere and all that. So I've been advocating for that sort of philosophy a long time, where if it's like, digital spaces having like your institutional Slack channels and all this different kind of stuff, and then students will likely take that into their own spaces and find their sort of community and stuff. But you can at least show a level of care that you've tried to help bridge the gaps and facilitate something to start, and then they go from there.
All students, back what I said beginning, they crave connection and belonging, right? And so if we as a staff member or faculty or whoever we are as a leader on campus can be that student's champion and create a relationship with them and walk with them while they are earning their degree towards graduation, right? We don't want them to just get the degree. We want them to have this experience and an understanding of how they got to where they ended up and just feel that sense of accomplishment. And so if you can be their champion, then be that person. And I would encourage my team to be that person for them too. There have been some success coaches who have commented that students are asking if they can be their friend on Facebook after graduation because they feel like it's just a friendly presence. And like that's the kind of service that we can get if we can just get the students in the room with us. And so I would just encourage you to be that student's person as they are earning their degree.
Yeah, well, because that's I think half of the equation is dissuading them of the notion that they don't belong. So having that champion to encourage them, and then there might be some kind of structural adjustments or something that you can make about like creating spaces or events that would be very inclusive and appealing to a wide audience and making sure everybody knows that they're welcome.
I'd just add, I'd go back to your place and be like, hey, I just went to this great conference about student success, and there's some colleges that use cohort models for adults. And I'd say encourage staff, leadership team to think about what does it mean to actually see adults and say, hey, we actually want to create space for you. We want to create a learning environment that feels right for y'all, and let's put you in a cohort. because, and you can use this as like, we know retention's not great for adults. And so let's see, what is a model that creates sustainability and connection? And I'd work to just connect other adults with adults. And that's the purpose of that.
Yeah, because I think like you know more than what they know, and the idea of like, hey, no, you're not alone here. Like, there's plenty of other students like you, and that like you can, I'm thinking of maybe like a a Slack type environment or something. Like you could set up channels for like, if it's an online institution or something where it's like, hey, here's all the people that are around New York City or whatever. Like you can do that, or yeah, like cohorts where it's like you just make sure that all these people are introduced to each other and all that. So like you're again being that catalyst, and then hopefully letting them take it from there.
So there you have it. Some incredible knowledge from our amazing panel. I thank them so much for their time to join and give their insights for this session. Thank you so much to Times Higher Education for sharing the audio so we could put it out here in the podcast feed. I hope the content of this session helps give you and your team some ideas of how to take better care of your adult learners. And thank you so much for listening to this special episode of the Hired Geek Podcast. The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances you'll like all the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing constantly, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks all designed to empower you to be a better hired professional. Our shows help you find your next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from people like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbolds, and Eddie Francis, as well as so many other of your favorite leaders in higher education. Enrollify is made possible by the support of Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.